meantime here, we want to bring into the conversation right now our friend, retired Marine intelligence officer and national security expert, Hal Kempfer. He joins me. Hal, thanks for being with us here. You and I, in the course of the war in Ukraine and this most recent war, the Israel-Hamas war, which is nearing the 6-month mark this weekend, Hal, you know that, we talk about inflection points in those wars, on the timeline and the duration of these conflicts. What will historians look to as some of these inflection points? Is today one of them, do you think?
Andrew, I think it is. Andrew Grove, the former CEO of Intel Corporation, used the term strategic inflection point. And basically the way he described it was, it's the point where however you were doing business before or whatever you're doing before will not be the way you do it going forward. And that's what you see here. I believe everything that was probably said in that phone call today from President Biden to Prime Minister Netanyahu. That was probably stuff that's been said quietly or less overtly, I should say, over the last few weeks. I don't think there's anything that was probably suggested in terms of concrete terms. And from what I can gather, looking at it, the U.S. has given Israel some very concrete measures that they think they should be taking in Gaza. Some very specific steps. They're not laying that out publicly, but I think they're saying, look, this is specifically what we told them to do, and right. So there are some benchmarks there. So I think that's the case. But I would remind people, this is not the first time the U.S. has had to be direct with Israel. This may seem a long time ago, and it is. The 56 war, where France, Britain, and Israel invaded Egypt over the Suez Canal. At the end of that, there was a UN resolution, and the U.S. was all for this, had voted for it, that Israel would have to withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Israel did not want to withdraw from the Gaza Strip. President Eisenhower had to be very direct with Israel and say, you have to withdraw from the Gaza Strip. And they did. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing here, which is, okay, we've used the broader language. Now it's time to get to specific language. And this is the most specific and direct I have heard in the last 6 months. Frankly, it's the most direct I think I've heard a U.S. president be to Israel in decades.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you and I have talked, for the last 2 months about the rhetoric from the Biden administration did not match the policy coming from the Biden administration. But what we saw today, and I'm going to ask you, is whether or not now we're seeing a change in policy. And if we are, and it seems like we are, what does that change in policy look like? I want to put up some of these tweets from our friend Lara Seligman at Politico, Hal. She covers the Pentagon. She says, POTUS laid out his significant concerns about Israel's operations in Gaza and made clear we are willing to reconsider our own policy approaches here. Seligman goes on to tweet, we would like to see changes in the next hours and days. POTUS was, quote, shaken by the attack on the WCK convoy and others. Seligman calls this a huge shift. She goes on to say, this may be a turning point for the Biden administration policy on Israel. She quotes this, we want to see some real changes on the Israeli side. If that doesn't happen, there'll have to be changes from our side, said John Kirby. Okay, so they may want policy changes from Israel. How can they achieve that in hours and days, Hal? How is that even feasible? I mean, that is what the Biden administration is asking of Israel, to change course in hours, if not days. Is that realistic?
Andrew, I would say it's realistic because from what I can tell, it kind of happened. It's not a tectonic shift, but the Erez crossing, it's the main crossing. At one time, it was the crossing, certainly to get from Israel into to Gaza. It's at the northern part of Gaza, the northern Gaza Strip. It's been closed since October 7th. It was pretty much destroyed on October 7th, but it's been closed since October 7th. Within hours of that phone call, the war cabinet at Netanyahu's urging had voted to reopen it. That's pretty significant. And then you have the port of Ashdod, which is only 16 miles north of the Gaza Strip. It's a significant, it's a good port facility. Certainly all the aid you can possibly imagine that want to get floated in could come in there unobstructed. You weren't going to have to build some ad hoc levee or something like you saw that WCK had to build to offload its stuff. This is a reinforced port. They have said that is open to aid as well. Now, is this the end state? No. But I have to say, the fact that it happened within hours, I think that's what the White House was talking about was, look, you have to move now. And those are concrete steps. Now, I'm not, look, I'm going to, sit back a little bit and, you might see a little bit of a Missouri in me as like show me state, which is, okay, you're going to have to show me more stuff. There's a lot more concrete things they want to see. And so I'd like to see that too. It's one thing to open the gate. It's another thing to let the aid flow in.
Okay. So Hal, I kind of set you up there, and you took it good because I have this in my my hand. This statement from the White House from Adrienne Watson. She's the National Security Council spokesperson in the White House. She says, "We welcome the steps announced by the Israeli government tonight at the president's request. Following his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, these steps, including a commitment to open the Ashdod port for the direct delivery of assistance into Gaza, to open the Erez crossing for a new route for assistance to reach North Gaza, and to significantly increase deliveries from Jordan directly into Gaza, must now be fully and rapidly implemented." So, can you call that a policy change? I mean, yes, it happened very quickly, or are some of these threats of a policy change empty by Biden administration folks, or not, because that's what happened today, that these ports and crossings are now open for more aid, so to speak? Are they empty threats or not? Or is this real structural policy change from the U.S. to Israel on how they prosecute this war?
Well, it's a very public political predicate to a policy change. It's shaping what could become a policy change if Netanyahu doesn't respond fast enough. Now, what he did today, what his war cabinet did today, with those three things you just mentioned, that's very significant. By the way, I would like to mention, prior to this, look at how tough it was to get aid in there. I mean, we're dropping, not just the U.S., but Jordan, we're dropping it by parachute. That's a horrible way to deliver aid. They're bringing in through these expeditionary piers that they built, offloading stuff coming in from Cyprus, another horrible way to deliver aid.
Okay.
And all because they can't get it in through these major crossings. And of course, what we saw was it went right to the heart of the matter, which is you got to get the aid in there. Now the question is, will the aid get in there? That's it's one thing to open up the crossing. It's another thing to see 200-300 trucks going through with aid.
Hal, I guess my last question to you is, this is not just kind of frosty relations between the Israel and the United States. Is this something more serious, more of a rupture, harder to recover from in the allyship and relationship? Are you worried about that?
I think there's been a bit of a gap in trust, if you will. Really with, I think, more of a gap in trust with the White House and Netanyahu. You got to remember the day that the WCK convoy was hit, and the nature of how that happened, it's not just a one-off. I mean, they hunted the convoy down and hit them one vehicle after another, even as they're in communication with the IDF. It shows just a huge institutional or systemic problem in however Israel is doing the targeting. And it's the same day that we announced that we're sending weapons to Israel. And I think this was, to a certain extent, in the White House, they've been sticking by Israel, although they did, abstain from that vote in the Security Council in the UN. However, I think that was one of those things that was kind of an affront, if you will, because somewhere there was a targeting decision on that, and it was a very, very bad targeting decision. And everyone knows it was a bad targeting decision. And I got to tell you, as somebody who's done targeting for decades, I can kind of figure out what probably happened, and it gets into the rules of engagement, whatever criteria they had on targeting. And frankly, I think there's a lot of irritation. I think there's a lot of irritation in the Pentagon right now because they know the Israelis know better than to do stuff like that. And so, I mean, I'm not saying these things don't happen in wartime, but that's why you train so hard. That's why you do all these things, to try and minimize stuff like that.
You know, there is, just lastly, there is some reporting to suggest that, you know, some of these kind of brigade commanders have been placed on leave. Some have even been relieved of command there within the IDF. You know, that this kind of fell into their purview here. So kind of after action repercussions and recriminations, you know, are kind of happening in real time over this horrible strike that killed 7 aid workers from World Central Kitchen. Have you heard that, Hal? Have you seen that?
I've heard that. I haven't seen the specifics on it, but I'd like to point out, you know, you can quietly put a brigade commander or a battalion commander on leave. Putting somebody like that on leave in the middle of combat is just very unusual, rarely done, certainly in a situation like this. But the thing is that Israel, at some point, if they really did, you know, make a mistake enough that you know, the generals, you know, whoever their higher command, has lost confidence in their ability to lead, in their ability to prosecute the war, at some point, and you see this happen with our own forces. I mean, we just did it recently in Camp Pendleton. You know, we very clearly say, you know, we've lost confidence in their abilities to lead because of whatever they've done. And sometimes we don't say what they've done, we just relieve them. And we've been more public about it. The Marine Corps has been public. The Navy's had a number of commanders relieved, unprecedented, some would say. The Army relieves people, Air Force, we all do this. This is what we do in the U.S., and that's to maintain public confidence. And that's something that Israel's going to have to do. Not just public confidence within Israel, but on the international scene.
All right, Hal Kempfer, we have to leave it at that. Thanks so much for a comprehensive discussion. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.